Hey Reddit, I guess I'm here because I just don't know what to do anymore. My name's Mike, and I've been married to Emily for 8 years. We live in this big, beautiful house with an even bigger garden, thanks to the company I started years ago. Things have always been good between us, or at least that's what I thought. Emily and I met in college, and she was everything I could have asked for: smart, funny, beautiful, the whole package. We got married pretty quickly after graduation, and I threw myself into building my business so we could have the life we always dreamed of. Fast forward to now, and it's like we're living in a picture-perfect postcard: the successful husband, the stunning wife, the sprawling estate. But lately, that picture's been cracking at the edges. A few months ago, I started noticing some changes. Emily, who used to be the warm, loving woman I fell in love with, seemed distant. At first, I chalked it up to her being stressed. Maybe she was bored or feeling a bit isolated in that big house. I suggested we go on a vacation or that she should pick up a hobby, but she just brushed it off, saying she was fine. I didn't push too hard. I figured everyone goes through rough patches. But then the rough patch turned into something else. She was on her phone a lot more, and there were these subtle changes in her behavior. She'd get defensive over small things, like why she took so long on her errands, or why she needed to get some fresh air alone in the middle of the day. Her attitude started to shift too. She became bitchy, snapping at me over the smallest things, which wasn't like her at all. We'd argue, and then she'd just act like nothing happened, like she could switch off her emotions just like that. I don't know why, but I ignored my gut for a long time. Maybe I didn't want to believe it, didn't want to think that the woman I loved more than anything could betray me like this. But deep down, I knew something was off, and it was only a matter of time before I had to face the truth. That truth came crashing down on me faster than I ever could have imagined. So, here's how it all went down. Last Friday, I decided to come home early from the office. I was exhausted, and honestly, I missed Emily. I thought maybe if I surprised her, we could spend some time together, maybe rekindle whatever the hell was happening between us. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something strange. The gardener's truck, an old, beat-up Chevy that belonged to this guy named Brad, was still there. Now, Brad had been working for us for about a year. He was around my age, maybe a bit younger, with a laid-back vibe. I never thought much of him beyond the fact that he did a damn good job keeping our garden looking like something out of a magazine. I mean, the guy seemed harmless, friendly, polite, never gave me any reason to be suspicious. But seeing his truck there that late in the day was odd. He usually finished up by noon. As I walked toward the front door, I felt that familiar pit in my stomach, the one that had been growing for weeks. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe he was working late on some project, right? But when I stepped inside, the house was eerily quiet. Too quiet. I walked through the foyer, calling out for Emily. No answer. My heart started to pound as I made my way to the back of the house, toward the garden. The sliding glass doors were slightly ajar, and that's when I heard it, voices, low and hushed, coming from outside. My chest tightened, but I kept moving, needing to know for sure. When I stepped out onto the patio, I saw them. Emily and Brad. They were standing close, too close, near the edge of the garden by the roses. I froze, just watching, my brain not fully processing what was happening. Emily was laughing at something he said, but it wasn't just any laugh, it was that flirty, playful laugh she used to give me. Then, without warning, she leaned in and kissed him. It felt like the world stopped. My whole body went cold as I watched them wife the woman I had devoted my life to, making out with our fucking gardener. They hadn't even noticed me standing there. My heart felt like it was about to explode, torn between rage and utter devastation. I wanted to scream, to shout, to do something, but I just stood there, paralyzed. Finally, I snapped out of it. I couldn't keep watching. I turned around and walked back into the house, my mind racing, my hands shaking. I didn't know what to do next, but one thing was clear: I had just uncovered the ugly truth I'd been trying so hard to ignore. I don't remember much about walking back into the house. Everything felt like a blur, like I was watching myself from the outside. My mind was racing, but one thought kept coming back to me: I had to confront her. I couldn't just sit on this. So, I headed upstairs to our bedroom, trying to pull myself together. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands clenched into fists, and waited. It felt like hours, though it was probably just minutes. Eventually, I heard the back door slide open and close. Footsteps echoed through the hall, and I heard Emily coming upstairs. My heart pounded in my chest, and when she finally walked into the room, I saw that she was smiling like nothing had happened, like she wasn't just kissing another man in our garden. "Hey, you're home early," she said, her voice bright and cheery. She didn't even look guilty. I couldn't hold back any longer. "Yeah, I came home early and found you making out with Brad," I spat out, not even trying to hide the disgust in my voice. Her smile dropped instantly, replaced with a look of shock. But then, just as quickly, she switched gears. "Mike, it's not what you think," she started, her voice going from surprised to defensive in a heartbeat. "Oh, really?" "Because it looked pretty clear to me," I shot back, standing up now, the anger building up inside me. "How long has this been going on, Emily? How many times have you lied to me? How many times have you snuck around behind my back?" She crossed her arms and rolled her eyes like I was overreacting. "You're being dramatic, Mike. It was just a kiss, nothing more. You're acting like I cheated on you or something." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you fucking serious right now? You did cheat on me." "A kiss is cheating, Emily, especially when it's with the damn gardener." She huffed, clearly annoyed that I wasn't backing down. "Oh, come on, Mike. You're never home. You're always at work, and I'm here, alone, in this big house. I needed someone to talk to, someone who's actually around. Brad was just there for me, you know." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "So what? You decide to play house with him while I'm out busting my ass to give us this life? That's your excuse?" Her face twisted into a sneer. "You act like this is all my fault. Maybe if you paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have needed to find it somewhere else." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I stood there, trying to process what she was saying, trying to make sense of how we got here. But nothing made sense. I didn't know this woman standing in front of me, the one who was so quick to justify her betrayal, who blamed me for her infidelity. I didn't even know what to say anymore. I just stood there, staring at her, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal. Everything we had built, everything I thought we had, was falling apart right in front of me. And Emily, she didn't seem to care. That was the hardest part, realizing that she wasn't sorry. Not really. She was more upset about getting caught than about what she had done, and in that moment, I knew things were never going to be the same between us. After that confrontation, I just shut down. Emily stormed out of the room, probably to avoid any more of my dramatics, and I was left standing there, feeling like my entire world had been ripped apart. It's a strange thing when you spend years of your life with someone, you never think they'll be the one to hurt you the most. But there I was, crushed under the weight of her betrayal. The next few days were a blur of anger and heartbreak. I couldn't even look at her without feeling this overwhelming surge of emotions: rage, sadness, disgust. She barely tried to talk to me, acting like everything was normal, like we were just having a little marital spat that would blow over. She'd smile at me in that fake, sweet way she'd perfected, as if that could erase the image of her and Brad out of my mind. But it couldn't. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together, heard her laugh, saw that damn kiss. I couldn't get it out of my head. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, only to find her sleeping peacefully next to me, as if nothing had changed. And that made me even angrier. How could she sleep so soundly when I was falling apart? I started to question everything. How long had this been going on? Was this the first time, or were there others before Brad? Had I been blind to other signs? I went back through our texts, our conversations, trying to piece together a timeline, trying to figure out when my wife decided I wasn't enough for her anymore. But it didn't matter how far back I looked, nothing made sense. I just kept coming back to the same question, why? I confronted her again a few nights later, hoping maybe this time she'd show some remorse, some sign that she understood the gravity of what she'd done. But no, Emily just doubled down on her excuses, telling me that I was being unreasonable, that I needed to get over it. If we were going to move on, her lack of guilt, her complete disregard for my feelings, only made the pain worse. How could someone I loved so much turn into this cold, uncaring person? The worst part was how lonely I felt. I couldn't talk to anyone about it. I didn't want to air our dirty laundry to friends or family. I didn't want them to see how broken we really were, so I kept it all inside, putting on a brave face during the day and falling apart at night. I felt trapped, stuck in a marriage that was crumbling before my eyes, with a wife who didn't seem to care if it did. But amidst all the anger, there was this deep sadness, this sense of loss. I wasn't just losing my wife, I was losing the future I thought we'd have together. The kids we talked about, the trips we planned, growing old together, all of it felt like it was slipping away. I was grieving for a marriage that was already dead, even if I hadn't fully accepted it yet. I kept thinking back to when we first met, when everything was so perfect, and wondered how the hell we ended up here. How could something so beautiful turn so ugly? And that thought, the realization that the life I thought we had was nothing but a lie, was what hurt the most. It took me some time, but eventually I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep living like this, feeling angry and betrayed every time I looked at her. I couldn't stay in a marriage where trust was shattered, where the woman I loved so easily dismissed my pain. One evening, after another day of us barely speaking, I sat Emily down in the living room. I tried to keep my voice calm, though inside I was still a mess. "We need to talk," I said, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Maybe it was worry, maybe it was annoyance. I couldn't tell. "What is it now, Mike?" she replied, sounding almost bored. I took a deep breath. "I can't do this anymore, Emily. I can't pretend that everything's fine when it's not. What you did, it broke something between us, and I don't think we can fix it." She stared at me for a long moment, as if she couldn't quite believe what I was saying. "So, what? You want a divorce?" There was no sadness in her voice, just a challenge, like she was daring me to follow through. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I do know that I can't stay in a marriage where I feel like this, where you act like what you did doesn't matter, where you don't even seem to care." That seemed to hit a nerve, and for the first time she looked a little shaken. "Mike, you're overreacting. It was just a mistake, one stupid mistake. We can get past this if you'd just let it go." I shook my head. "It wasn't just a mistake, Emily. It was a choice. You chose to betray me, and now you're choosing to brush it off like it's nothing. I don't know how to move past that." She went quiet, her gaze dropping to the floor. For a second, I thought she might finally apologize, show some real remorse, but when she looked back up at me, her eyes were hard. "Fine. If you're going to be like that, maybe we should just end it. I'm tired of trying to make you see reason." Her words hit me like a slap, but at the same time there was a strange sense of relief. It was like a weight lifting off my shoulders. I'd spent so much time trying to figure out how to fix things, how to make it work, but maybe there was nothing left to save. Maybe the best thing for both of us was to walk away. "Maybe we should," I said quietly, more to myself than to her. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a deep, lingering sadness. The next few days were a whirlwind of difficult conversations and decisions. We agreed to separate, to start the process of untangling our lives. Emily was surprisingly quick to accept it, almost like she'd been waiting for me to say it. There were no dramatic fights, no tears, just the cold, practical steps of ending a marriage. We told our friends and family that we were parting ways amicably, though I knew they could sense there was more to the story. As I moved my things into a temporary apartment, I thought about everything that had happened, everything that had led us to this point. The anger had subsided, replaced by a quiet acceptance. I'd done everything I could to make it work, but sometimes things just break beyond repair. I realized that holding on to something that no longer served either of us would only prolong the pain. In the end, what I learned is that trust is the foundation of any relationship. Without it, there's nothing left to build on. And once it's broken, no amount of love or history can put the pieces back together. It's a hard lesson, but one I'll carry with me as I move forward. If I could offer any advice to others going through something similar, it's this: don't ignore the red flags. Trust your gut, and if something feels off, don't wait until it's too late to address it. It's better to face the truth head on than to live in the shadow of a lie.